Welcome to the Church of Thomas. Abraham's claim, 1-2008. All over the world there are different ideas about property rights and ownership. In the Western world we have a piece of paper that is a legal document of ownership. We might have a car title, a land deed, a house deed, etc. All of these pieces of paper give a name of the owner, a description, and the government seal of wherever it is registered. These legal pieces of paper are a relatively new invention. Until writing became a common talent, it did not come into widespread use. Only leaders of government had access to such things. To claim to a property was based on many factors. Often it was from a family or tribal occupation of a piece of land. If a clan had controlled it for generations, they were generally not challenged unless they were invaded by someone stronger or better equipped. Water holes, hunting areas, pasturage, and gathering places fell into these categories. When Europeans came to the American continent, they brought their property ideas. They also had the strength of arms to enforce their ideas about land ownership. They created contracts to make the transfer of ownership legal in the eyes of the government wherever they originated. The tribes that lived on this continent had a very different way of looking at the land and its resources. Not all of the tribes, but most of them, held an area as common property. A person's personal tools and bedding were thought of as being owned because it was made by that person. The command structure of the tribes was also rather informal. There might be a strong hunter that led for a few years until some other hunter proved more able to provide for and lead the tribe. The Europeans were often military units or under military jurisdiction. The idea that an agreement was reached with one person only to have it negated by the next leader galled them no end. Tribes often allowed another group to hunt or fish in their area if properly rewarded. Some nice present was considered a sign of friendship. It worked pretty well until the alien idea of land ownership was introduced. When a present was given to a tribal person, they thought that they were giving permission to use the land, like hunting or fishing. It was meant to be temporary and a gesture of sharing the resources, not land ownership. So the Europeans who bothered to negotiate instead of take the land got great deals. They set it up as a land transfer with paperwork and documents. These were then signed by whoever was around at the time. The pieces of paper and the documents meant absolutely nothing to the tribal people. The Europeans then said the equivalent of, "Get off my land." When the tribes resisted this discourtesy, they were considered renegades, reneging on the contracts. When hostilities broke out, it was a losing battle for tribal people, though they held on for a long time. They became intruders in their own land, purchased by their guests. It was a sad sequence of events. The clash of these very different cultures was based largely on very different ideas about property rights and land ownership. In many parts of the world, there have been other instances of cultural differences leading to dramatic misunderstandings. This is an extreme example. Before modern deeds, most land was held by the chief, a clan leader, or a king. The claims were mostly oral pass-downs from one generation to another. Most cultures that interacted in the past in a peaceful way were neighbors. They often had similar, if not the same, ideas of property rights and land ownership. There were disputes, but they could be taken to the government to judge the cases. There were common understandings and expectations. Such is the case with Abraham in his time. He was a clan leader and patriarch. The contracts he entered into had the force of law. Any agreement he entered into bound him and his tribes to the responsibilities and the benefits of that agreement. There was an agreement that Abraham entered into that has had ripples into modern times. Abraham, Sarah, and their family had lived for over 40 years among the Hittites. Sarah was 90 when she was told her heart's desire of a child, an heir, for Abraham was at hand. Sarah was reported to have died at the ancient age of 127. Abraham was considered to be a foreign prince by the Hittites and their king. Abraham and his people lived in the land of Canaan, contributing to the economy of Canaan. However, they were considered resident aliens. No Hittite had allowed him or his family to purchase land. The Hittites were very reluctant to sell any property to him because it would give him status as part of their country. It would have given Abraham and his clan legal standing in their courts of law. If Abraham had been given land, it would have been just a gift. It would have been a one-time boon, and it would have given him no other benefits. There was a long-standing gift from the Hittite king to let Abraham live and raise his livestock in the land of Canaan. Abraham was considered a nomad with no land. The king could have changed his mind. Abraham could have been driven out of Canaan. If this had occurred, no one would have given it another thought. In the New Testament verses of Genesis 23, Sarah has just died. Abraham needs a burial site for his beloved wife. He offers to buy a small cave in which he can bury her. The Hittites' counter-offer reflects their reluctance as locals to allow any sort of legal standing and foothold on their land. They tell Abraham over and over again that they will give him the burial site that he wants. They offer it as a charity gift to a grieving nomad. In the end, Abraham refuses these offers of the burial site as a gift. The farmer who owned the cave liked the idea of getting money for his good deed. They finally settled on an agreement that the cave could be purchased. Once that barrier to the land purchase was breached, the purchase included much more than Abraham had originally requested. According to God's plan, Abraham became a rightful shareholder in the land that God promised. The property agreement was written into a lawful deed. It not only included the cave, but the field adjoining it, and not just the field, but the resources already present on the property. The orchard that was on the field now was Abraham's property. Abraham's people were not going to be sharecroppers. No ex-owner could come and get harvest from the field unless it was allowed by Abraham. Abraham was now a landowner with all its rights and responsibilities under the law. The outright purchasing of a burial site for Sarah had secured the permanent right for Abraham's clan and people to settle in the land of Canaan. No one would have a legal right to question their deeded right from that time to present to live in the land of Canaan. Conquest of Canaan was not necessary to God's plan. God had already arranged for the descendants of Abraham the right to live and thrive in Canaan. God bless the whole world, no exceptions. Angel Eliza.